The chamber hummed with the low thrum of alien translators, their voices weaving a tapestry of clicks, hisses, and modulated tones that bounced off the vaulted ceilings of the Galactic Concord Hall. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the human delegation's podium, her posture rigid, the crisp lines of her Navy uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes and crystalline exoskeletons around her. At 42 she'd seen enough frontier skirmishes to know when words failed, and today they had shattered like brittle ice. Beside her, Dr. Kai Ren leaned on the console, his fingers drumming a silent rhythm against the cool metal. The xenobiologist's eyes, sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, flicked between the holographic displays and the sea of representatives. Kai was the thinker, the one who pieced together the why behind the universe's chaos. But even he couldn't mask the tension in his jaw as the lead delegate from the Vorath Collective droned on. "We cannot accommodate your irregularities," the Vorath said, its multifaceted eyes gleaming under the hall's artificial lights. The creature's voice, filtered through the translator, carried a metallic edge like rusted gears grinding. "Human expansion disrupts the equilibrium. Your species' propensity for unchecked innovation endangers the core worlds." Ilara's hand tightened on the podium's edge. "Innovation. That's what they called it when humans jury-rigged a failing warp drive from scrap and salvaged an entire colony from a nebula storm. To the Concord it was just reckless noise." Kai shot her a sidelong glance, his voice low. "They're stalling. Again. If we don't push back now, I know." Ilara's response was clipped, her blue eyes fixed on the central dais where the High Arbiter, a towering Solari with iridescent scales, presided. The Arbiter's tendrils twitched, signaling impatience. Humanity's petition for full membership, equal say in trade routes, resource allocation, defense pacts, had dragged on for cycles. But the real insult burned deeper. The Concord's subtle quarantines on human tech, the veiled threats to their outposts. She straightened, activating her own mic. "High Arbiter, esteemed delegates. Humanity has contributed to this alliance. Medical breakthroughs from our labs, shield tech that saved the Krell fleets during the Void incursion. Denying us a seat isn't equilibrium. It's exclusion." Murmurs rippled through the hall, a wave of unease from the avian Chirix to the burly, furred Grom. The Vorath delegate leaned forward, its mandibles clicking. "Contributions do not erase risks. Your ingenuity breeds anomalies. The recent incident at Epsilon 7, that was a malfunction, not malice," Kai interjected, his tone steady but edged with heat. He pulled up a hollow projection. Schematics of the human-engineered habitat module, its life support systems glowing in blue lines. "We fixed it in hours. Your protocols would have taken weeks." The Arbiter raised a tendril, silencing the room. "Captain Voss, your passion is noted. But the vote stands. Humanity's provisional status remains. No expansion beyond the Veil sector without Concord oversight." Ilara felt the words like a gut punch. The Veil sector, their cradle worlds choked by regulations while others claimed the stars freely. She exchanged a look with Kai, then with Lieutenant Mira Thorne, who stood silent at the rear of their delegation. Mira, the youngest at 28, was all muscle and quiet resolve, her dark hair cropped short under her cap. She'd piloted them here through asteroid fields that made lesser crews balk, but now her fists clenched at her sides. "Understood," Ilara said finally, her voice even. But inside resolve hardened like cooling steel. As the session adjourned, the hall emptied in a swirl of robes and exosuits, leaving echoes in the vast space. Ilara turned to her team, the weight of the chamber's grandeur pressing down. "We're done here," she said, voice low. "Pack it up. We're going home, our way." Kai paused, brow furrowing. "Leaving the floor? That's unprecedented. They'll see it as defiance. Let them." Mira stepped forward, her eyes alight with that fierce spark Ilara relied on. "We've bent enough. Time to stand straight." Outside, the docking bays of the Concord station gleamed under perpetual starlight, shuttles humming to life. Ilara led them to their vessel, the Endeavor, a sturdy corvette patched from battles and ingenuity alike. As the airlock sealed behind them, the ship's AI chimed softly, "All systems nominal, Captain." But nominal felt like a lie. The stars beyond the viewport stretched infinite, holding secrets the Concord hoarded. Elara settled into the command chair, Kai at navigation, Mira at engineering. Plot course for Sol. Full burn. Engines thrummed, propelling them away from the station's embrace. In the calm silence, Elara wondered if the galaxy truly held its breath, or if it was just the calm before the storm they'd ignite. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair. The hum of the bridges consoles a steady pulse against the tension coiling in her gut. The holographic display flickered with incoming data from the Council's final transmission. Humanity's abrupt withdrawal from the Galactic Concord, a move that had left the assembly chamber in stunned silence. Her crew, a tight-knit trio including herself, watched the feed in the dim glow of the Starship Odyssey's control room. There was Marcus Hale, the engineer, his wiry frame hunched over a diagnostic panel, fingers dancing across keys with the precision of someone who'd rebuilt engines from scrap. Beside him sat Lena Torres, the xenobiologist, her sharp eyes narrowed behind augmented lenses, analyzing the subtle shifts in alien body language captured in the recording. "They're reeling," Lena said, her voice low and analytical, breaking the quiet. She tapped the holo, freezing it on the delegate from the Vexery Collective, its tentacles twitching in what passed for shock among their kind. "We just pulled the plug on centuries of uneasy peace." The stars held their breath. "All right, now they're about to exhale." Elara nodded, forcing her expression to stay neutral. Brave in the face of the unknown, that was her anchor, even if doubt gnawed at the edges. "And we're the ones who have to navigate the fallout." Marcus, status on the jump drive? "We need to be ghosts in the void before the Concord's patrols scramble." Marcus didn't look up, his witty retort laced with the caution that kept them alive. "She's purring like a contented cat, Cap, but that last refit skimped on the flux capacitors. One wrong fold in space and we're confetti. Give me 10 minutes to reroute power, unless you want to explain to the Council why we're late for our own exile." The Odyssey hung in the outer reaches of Sol's heliosphere, a sleek human vessel designed for deep space reconnaissance, now repurposed for something far riskier, charting a path independent of the Concord's iron grip. The external challenge had crystallized hours ago, a sudden resource shortage in their cryofuel reserves, depleted faster than anticipated during the tense negotiations on the Council floor. Without it, their planned leap to the uncharted fringes would falter, stranding them in contested space where rival scout ships from the Krell Dominion prowled like predators scenting blood. Elara rose, pacing the narrow deck, her boots echoing softly. The viewport framed the fading blue marble of Earth, a reminder of what they'd left behind, not in defeat but defiance. "We can't afford to drift." "Lena, any leads on alternative sources? Asteroid belts, maybe, or a neutral outpost?" Lena scrolled through her database, her cautious nature shining through in the deliberate pauses. "The nearest viable cache is in the Epsilon Eridani system, but it's a Krell claim. Sneaking in means dodging their sensor nets, think minefields in the dark." A sharp alert blared, red lights strobing across the bridge. Marcus swore under his breath, slamming a fist on his console. "Spoke too soon. Flux buildup, drives destabilizing. Early plans toast, we're venting plasma." Elara's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady, rallying them with the grit that defined human crews. "Adapt. Marcus, isolate the breach. Lena, plot a micro-jump to the nearest debris field for cover. We improvise fuel from what's at hand, ice chunks if we have to melt them down." As the ship shuddered, engines whining in protest, the crew moved as one, their camaraderie forged in the fires of past missions. The stars outside seemed to press closer, the void's vastness a tangible weight, but in that moment, Elara felt the spark of possibility. They weren't running blind, they were rewriting the map one clever fix at a time. Yet the lingering cost loomed. The Krell wouldn't take kindly to intruders, and one wrong move could ignite the very conflict humanity had just walked away from. Elena gripped the armrests of the shuttle's command chair, her knuckles whitening against the worn synth leather. The viewport ahead framed the swirling nebula like a bruise on the void, its gases twisting in lazy spirals that hid the Council's patrol ships. Jax hunched over the console beside her, his fingers dancing across the holographic display, muttering calculations under his breath. "They're closing in," he said, voice steady but edged with that familiar bite. 2 clicks and gaining. If we push the engines harder, we might slip into the nebula's wake before they lock weapons. She nodded, eyes fixed on the sensor blips. Leaving the council floor had been her call, humanity's unified shout of enough, after decades of being sidelined in galactic squabbles. But now, with the Accord's enforcers on their tail, it felt less like defiance and more like a desperate sprint. The stakes weren't just pride. One wrong move, and the prototype drive they'd salvaged from the Council archives could end up in enemy hands, dooming the colonies back home to isolation. "Engage the bafflers," Elena ordered. The engineer complied without a word, a sly grin cracking his focus as the shuttle shuddered, cloaking fields humming to life. They were humans after all, ingenuities born from scraping by on a rock that threw curveballs daily. This nebula run was their ticket to the outer rim, where sympathetic factions waited to hear Earth's case unfiltered. The ship lurched as the first patrol vessel fired a warning shot, the beam grazing their shields in a flash of blue. Alarms wailed, sharp and insistent. Jack swore, slamming a fist on the panel. "Shields at 70%. That was no warning, they're testing us." Elena's mind raced. The plan had been simple. Use the nebula's interference to mask their signature. Rendezvous with the freighter Endeavour on the far side. But the patrols were smarter than intel suggested, adapting faster than a glitch in the system. She unstrapped, leaning over Jax's shoulder. The display showed the nebula's core pulsing with electromagnetic storms, beautiful, deadly, like veins of lightning frozen in time. "Divert power from life support," she said. "Give the bafflers everything." He shot her a look, eyebrows arched. "You're serious? We'll be breathing thin in 10 minutes. Better thin than dead." Her tone left no room for debate. Jax grumbled but rerouted the flow, the air recyclers whining down to a whisper. The shuttle dove, engines flaring as they pierced the nebula's outer veil. Colors bloomed across the viewport, purples and indigos bleeding into the black, particles sparkling like distant stars caught in a web. For a heartbeat it worked. The sensor blips faded, swallowed by the interference. Elena allowed herself a breath, the cabin's hum settling into a tense rhythm. Jax leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. "Clever as always, Cap reminds me of that time on Mars." A jolt cut him off. The ship bucked violently, hull groaning as if protesting the intrusion. Red lights flooded the bridge. "What the hell?" Elena barked, strapping back in. "Storm surge," Jax replied, hands flying again. Bigger than scans showed. "We're caught in a flux wave, drives are spiking." The viewport filled with chaos now, arcs of plasma whipping past, illuminating the cockpit in staccato bursts. Elena's stomach twisted. This wasn't just evasion anymore. The nebula wasn't neutral ground, it was alive, hungry, its hazards amplified by the Council's old mining scars. One surge could fry their circuits, leave them drifting hulks for scavengers. "Compensate," she shouted over the din. Jax nodded, but his face paled as readings climbed. The early plan, straight shot through the shallows, had backfired spectacularly. They'd stirred the beast instead of slipping by. He wrestled the controls, the shuttle pitching sideways to avoid a plasma tendril that lashed out like a serpent's tongue. Sparks erupted from a panel, acrid smoke curling into the thinning air. Elena's vision blurred at the edges, oxygen dipping low, but she forced clarity. "Auxiliary thrusters. Fire them in sequence. We ride the wave out." Jax's eyes met hers, a flicker of doubt giving way to grit. "On it." The engines roared in response, the ship surfing the surge's edge, a fragile speck against the cosmic fury. But as they crested the wave, a new blip pierced the static. The patrols adapting again, vectors locked. The stars beyond the nebula seemed to hold still, waiting for the humans to falter or fight. Captain Ilera Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the last skirmish with the Vorith raiders. Her crew, small, tight-knit, human to the core, waited in tense silence. Beside her, Engineer Raj Patel wiped grease from his hands, his dark eyes scanning the tactical display. "Shields at 80%, Cap. That ion storm we skirted fried the backups." Across the bridge, Lieutenant Kira Voss, Ilara's younger sister, all fire and unyielding optimism, leaned over the navigation console. We push through, we lose the slipstream window. Vorith patrols are closing in from Sector 7. Her voice carried that edge, the one that said she was already calculating odds, rerouting power in her head. Ilara nodded, her jaw set. Humanity had walked out of the Galactic Council 6 months ago, tired of the endless debates and the aliens' reluctance to back real action against threats like the Vorith. No more begging for scraps of tech or alliances that crumbled under fire. Now their independent freighter, the Stellar Drift, was hauling vital colony supplies to the outer rims, proof that humans could stand alone. But the Vorith didn't care about politics. They saw easy prey in a lone human ship dodging council patrols. Helm, evasive pattern Delta, Ilara ordered, her voice steady as the recycled air. The ship lurched, thrusters firing in short, angry bursts. Debris pinged off the hull, each impact a reminder of the cost. One wrong hit and they joined the wreckage. Raj cursed under his breath, fingers flying over his panel. Port nacelles venting plasma. I can patch it, but it'll take time we don't have. He shot Ilara a look, the kind that spoke volumes without words. They've got us outnumbered, outgunned. But he didn't say it. Not on her bridge. Sis, if we dump the cargo we might lighten the load enough to outrun them. But the colonies, they'll starve without this. Ilara's mind raced, weighing lives against survival. The council would laugh, humans always charging in without a fleet. But that's what got them this far, grit over grand strategy. No. We adapt. Raj, reroute auxiliary power to the forward arrays. Kira, plot a course through the densest debris. Let the Vorith chase ghosts. The ship dove into the field, sensors screaming as chunks of metal loomed like silent sentinels. A Vorith fighter streaked past, its energy bolts grazing the shields in a shower of sparks. Ilara felt the deck shudder, the air growing thick with the scent of overheating circuits. Her hands tightened. This wasn't just a run, it was a statement. Humanity left the floor, but they weren't done fighting. Raj patched the nacelle mid-maneuver, sweat beading on his forehead as he jury-rigged conduits with bare hands and a plasma torch. Holding, for now. The drift surged forward, weaving through the chaos. Kira hooped as a Vorith ship clipped a derelict hull, exploding in a bloom of fire that lit the void like a dying star. But the lead pursuer locked on, its weapons charging with an ominous whine over the comms. Ilara's pulse thrummed. One shot could end them. All hands brace. In that moment, doubt flickered. Had walking away from the council left them too exposed? No. It left them free. The bolt fired, slamming into the debris just ahead. The explosion propelled them forward, slingshotting the drift toward open space. Alarms blared, but they were pulling away. Ilara allowed a grim smile. Nice flying, Kira. Raj, damage report. Minor hull breaches, but we're clear. For now. He slumped back, exhaling. Kira grinned, punching coordinates. Next stop, the relay station. If we can uplink the colony manifest, maybe some old allies will bite. Ilara stared at the stars ahead, the weight of command settling deeper. The Vorith would regroup, and the council's silence echoed louder than any debate. But her crew family really had turned the tide with sweat and smarts. Humanity's breath might make the stars hold theirs, but they'd exhale fire. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the stellar Vanguard's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the old skirmishes, now a hazardous gauntlet blocking their path to the neutral relay station. Her crew, the only 4 souls she'd trust with humanity's fragile gambit, exchanged glances in the dim bridge light. But as they banked sharply, a hidden mine cluster ignited, blooming into azure fireballs that lit the bridge in harsh relief. Shields holding at 60%. Jax shouted, sweat beading on his brow. He rerouted power from life support, the air growing cooler, thinner. But if we take another hit like that, Ilara cut him off, her voice steady amid the chaos. We adapt. Mira options? The lieutenant's mind raced, her wit flashing like a blade. The wrecks, some have intact magnetic fields. If we slingshot off one we could skip the densest part. Risky, but it beats turning back. No time for debate. Elara punched the command. Do it. Jax reinforced the grapples. The Vanguard dove toward a colossal Kragther dreadnought husk, its scarred flanks a testament to forgotten wars. Thrusters flared, latching onto the metal with a metallic groan. The ship spun, propelled by the residual magnetism, hurtling them free of the minefield in a dizzying arc. But the maneuver tore at the hull, a stress fracture spiderwebbed across the engineering bay, and red lights pulsed, hull breach imminent. They burst into clear space, the relay station's beacon winking in the distance. Elara exhaled, but the victory tasted bittersweet. Jax reported casualties. None dead, but the breach had vented supplies, cutting their reserves by a third. We make the relay, she said, rising to face her team, but this field's just the start. The stars aren't forgiving quitters. Mira smirked faintly, wiping debris from her uniform. Good thing we're not quitting. The crew shared a nod, the weight of their isolation settling deeper, but so did the fire of resolve. Humanity's voice would echo, even if it cost them everything. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the stellar Nomad's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the asteroid field's chaotic dance, jagged rocks tumbling in lazy orbits, lit by the faint glow of a binary star system. Her crew, small and battle-worn, manned their stations with the quiet efficiency born of too many close calls. Beside her, Lieutenant Kai Rin, the ship's wiry engineer with his perpetual squint and quick grin, tapped at his console. Across the bridge Dr. Mira Solis, the xenobiologist whose calm demeanor hid a spine of steel, monitored the scanners for any sign of pursuit. We've got incoming, Kai said, his voice steady but edged with that familiar spark of challenge. The readings showed 3 Krell scout ships weaving through the debris, their sleek hulls designed for speed in environments that would shred lesser vessels. The Krell, those tentacled bureaucrats who'd barred humanity from the Galactic Accord after the Council debacle, weren't known for mercy when enforcing their edicts. Evasive pattern Delta. Keep us in the thick of it, those rocks are our best shield. The Nomad lurched as thrusters fired, slipping between 2 boulders the size of city blocks. Alarms blared briefly, a near miss with a micrometeorite swarm, but Kai's hands flew over the controls, rerouting power to the inertial dampeners. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he didn't flinch. Mira leaned forward, her fingers tracing the holographic display. They're adapting. The lead ship's deploying grapples, trying to pin us against the field. Her voice carried no panic, just the clinical observation of someone who dissected alien tech in her sleep. The Krell's weapons were precise, meant to disable rather than destroy, but in this gravity well, one wrong hit could send them spinning into oblivion. Elara's mind raced through options. The Council's rejection had stranded them, humanity's delegation cast out, ships impounded, alliances shattered. Now, scavenging for fuel and data cores in this forsaken belt was their only shot at proving the Accord wrong. But the Krell patrols were closing the net, drawn by the Nomad's unauthorized emissions. Kai, can we spoof their sensors? Make us look like debris? He chuckled, a low rumble amid the creaks of straining hull plates. Already on it, Cap rigging the exhaust vents to vent plasma in a debris pattern. It'll buy us maybe 10 minutes. The ship shuddered as the maneuver engaged, a burst of ionized gas blooming behind them like a false asteroid trail. On the view screen, the Krell ships hesitated, their formations breaking as they scanned the illusion. But the lead scout adjusted course, tentacles of sensor arrays extending like probing fingers. It fired a warning shot, a lance of energy that grazed the Nomad's flank, scorching the outer plating. Sparks danced across the bridge, and Mira ducked instinctively, her tablet clattering to the floor. They're not buying it fully, Elara muttered, unstrapping her harness. Mira, get to the lab, prep the EMP burst if we need it. Kai, plot a slingshot around that big rock at bearing 247. We'll use its gravity to flip their pursuit. Her orders came crisp, born from years of captaining refugee convoys through worse than this. Humanity's grit wasn't in firepower, it was in turning the universe's own chaos against itself. As the Nomad accelerated, the asteroid loomed larger, its cratered surface a mottled gray under the star's harsh light. Kai's fingers blurred on the controls, coaxing every ounce of power from the overtaxed reactors. Slingshot engaged. Hold on, this'll be rough. The ship dove, engines roaring defiance. The Krell followed, but too rigidly, their AI-piloted crafts unable to match the human intuition for improvisation. Ilera watched the distance close on the tactical overlay, her heart pounding in rhythm with the alarms. One mistake and they'd be scrap, humanity's fragile foothold in the stars reduced to echoes. Myra's voice crackled over the comm from the lab below. EMP ready, but it'll fry our own NAV for a cycle. Your call. Ilera glanced at Kai, who met her eyes with a nod, trust earned in the fires of exile. Do it, she said. Let's show them why we walked out that door. The burst erupted silently in the void, a ripple of electromagnetic fury that lit the field like a newborn sun. The Krell ships stuttered, systems locking as they drifted helplessly into the rocks. The Nomad careened out the other side, battered but free, trailing sparks from its wounded hull. But as the binary stars wheeled into view, Ilera spotted the real cost, a hairline fracture in the main drive core visible on the diagnostics. They'd limp to the next outpost, but repairs would eat their scant resources. The stars held their breath, waiting to see if humanity's gamble would pay off, or leave them adrift forever. Elena gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the ship's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, the nebulous swirling gases painting the bridge in eerie hues. Purples and blues. They'd been chasing the signal for hours now, ever since the Council's blockade forced them into this uncharted fringe. Marcus, any luck cracking that interference? She asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. From the engineering console, Marcus leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. His fingers danced over the holographic display, pulling up layers of code that looked like tangled vines to anyone else. It's like the universe is whispering secrets through a broken radio, he muttered, his wit sharpened by frustration. The signal's alien, all right, pulsing in patterns that don't match any known language. But if I reroute power from the shields, I might boost the receiver enough to... A sharp alarm cut him off, red lights pulsing across the bridge. Lila burst through the hatch from the science lab, her tablet clutched like a shield. Captain, the engines are spiking. That nebula's got electromagnetic storms, they're frying our navigation arrays. Her eyes, usually calm behind her glasses, darted to the view screen where tendrils of plasma arced like lightning in slow motion. Elena nodded, already calculating. Leaving the Council had been a gamble, humanity's bold stand against their endless debates and sanctions. But out here with the nearest friendly port light years away, regrets were a luxury. Divert auxiliary power to Nav Marcus. Get me that signal before we drift into the heart of it. He grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. On it. Just don't blame me if we end up hailing a space whale. His hands flew faster, rerouting flows that made the lights dim briefly. The ship groaned, a metallic protest echoing through the corridors. Lila slid into the co-pilot seat, her fingers tapping coordinates. Storms like this could short the whole grid. We've got maybe 20 minutes before we're blind. She glanced at Elena, a silent question in her gaze. Had their defiance pushed them too far? But Elena met it with a firm look. No room for doubt now. The signal strengthened suddenly, a rhythmic beep cutting through the static. Marcus whooped. Got it? Its coordinates, pointing to a derelict station, dead ahead. The view screen cleared just enough to show a skeletal structure looming in the nebula's glow, its hull pitted and dark, like bones left by some cosmic predator. Elena leaned forward. Helm, adjust course. Cautious approach. We're not the first to stumble on this. As the ship banked, a low rumble built, the storm's fury pressing against their hull. Sparks danced along the bulkheads and Lila's tablet beeped a warning, structural integrity at 80%. They're pulling us in, Lila said, her voice tight. Gravitic anomalies, like a trap. Marcus cursed under his breath, slamming a panel to seal a venting conduit. The air grew thick with the scent of ozone, the bridge tilting as the ship fought invisible currents. Elena stood, bracing against the sway. Hold her steady. If this station's the key to bypassing the blockade, we take the risk. Her mind raced, visions of the Council's fleets closing in, humanity's fragile alliance fracturing without their return. But retreat wasn't an option. They'd left the floor for this, for a chance to chart their own stars. A massive jolt rocked them, the view screen shattering into digital fragments. Alarms wailed as the ship lurched toward the station, caught in its pull. Marcus yelled over the din, "Engines at max, I can try a burst, but it'll cost us fuel we can't spare." "Do it," Elena ordered, gripping the console. Lila's hands blurred on the controls, compensating for the drift. The station grew larger, its docking bays yawning like open mouths. In that moment, suspended between storm and shadow, Elena felt the weight of it all, their ingenuity against the void's indifference. The burst fired, a thunderous roar that shoved them free, but not without price. A secondary explosion lit the engineering feed, a power relay gone. They limped toward the station, scarred but intact, the signal now a steady beacon. As the clamps engaged with a resounding clang, silence fell, broken only by their ragged breaths. "Suited up," Elena said, already moving. "We board, find what drew us here, and get out before the storm, or whatever's waiting, catches us." Marcus nodded, slinging a toolkit over his shoulder, while Lila checked her scanner, its light casting long shadows. The airlock cycled, and they stepped into the unknown, the stars holding their breath beyond the fractured glass. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the skirmish 2 hours past. Her crew, a tight-knit trio forged in the fires of frontier patrols, watched in silence. Lieutenant Kai Ren, her tactical officer, leaned forward, his fingers dancing over the console. "Sensors picking up residual energy signatures, Captain. That Krell frigate didn't go down alone." Ilara nodded, her jaw set. Kai's caution had saved them more times than she could count, his mind always 3 steps ahead, mapping risks like a chess master. Beside him, Engineer Mira Solis wiped grease from her hands, her eyes sharp despite the fatigue etching lines around them. Mira was the grit in their machine, unflappable, her fixes born from sheer human stubbornness rather than flawless tech. The challenge loomed larger than the debris. The Krell had jammed their comms array during the escape, leaving the Endeavor blind to the Council's fleet positions. One wrong turn through this field, and they'd be scrap or worse, captured and paraded as the humans who dared walk out on the Galactic Accord. The stakes bit deep, humanity's first independent push into uncharted space, and failure meant isolation, painted as aggressors by the xenophobic Council. "Route us through the outer band," Ilara said, her voice steady. "Mira, can you jury-rig the shields to pulse against the micro-impacts?" Mira cracked her knuckles, already pulling up schematics on her tablet. "Give me 10 minutes. It'll draw power from life support, but we'll breathe shallow." Kai frowned, plotting the course. "That band's thick with Krell mines. One graze and we're venting Atmo." The ship shuddered as they entered the field, chunks of metal pinging off the hull like hail on a tin roof. Ilara felt the tension coil in her gut, but she kept her gaze forward. No speeches, actions would speak. A larger fragment loomed, twisting lazily in the void, its edges jagged like broken teeth. "Evade left." Kai barked, and Ilara yanked the controls. The Endeavor groaned, thrusters firing in a burst that slung them sideways. Alarms blared, a mine had clipped their wing, sparking warnings across the board. "Shields at 60%, Mira called, diving under a panel. Sparks flew as she welded reinforcements, her curses muffled but fervent. "Hold her steady, Cap. I've got this." Ilara's hands steadied the ship, sweat beading on her brow. The plan to slip the net had backfired. The Krell were herding them toward a choke point where reinforcements waited. Comms crackled faintly, a ghost signal, perhaps the Council's demand for surrender. She ignored it, focusing on the scan, a narrow gap ahead flanked by derelict wrecks. Kai marked that vector. "Mira, divert auxiliary power now." The engineer emerged, face smudged, nodding. Shields pulsing. "We're ghosts in the fog." They plunged through, the gap closing like a vice. A Krell drone buzzed past, its scan beam grazing the hull before Kai's countermeasures spoofed it away. The ship emerged on the other side, engines straining but intact. But the cost lingered. Life support flickered, air growing thin. Ilara glanced at her crew, Kai recalibrating sensors, Mira stowing tools with a weary grin. "One step closer to the frontier," she said softly. Kai met her eyes, a spark of resolve in his. "And one more scar on the old girl." The stars stretched ahead, vast and unforgiving, but the Endeavor pressed on, humanity's defiant spark cutting through the dark. The view screen flickered with the nebula's swirling chaos, gaseous tendrils of violet and crimson coiling like living smoke, hiding the gravitational anomalies that had already claimed 2 scout probes. Jax hunched over the engineering console, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls, sweat beading on his forehead despite the recycled air's chill. "We can't keep burning fuel like this," Mira said, her voice steady but edged with the caution that had saved them twice already. She leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed, her eyes flicking between the sensor readouts and Elena's profile. "The recyclers are at 62% efficiency. Another detour around that plasma storm, and we're looking at rationing oxygen by dawn cycle." Elena nodded, not taking her gaze from the screen. The stellar nomad had been their home for 3 months since the Council's betrayal. Those pompous Krell delegates pulling strings to strand humanity's envoys in this forsaken arm of the galaxy. No more alliances, no more begging for scraps. Just them, a refitted freighter, and the stars that now felt like a vast, indifferent jury. But the nebula wasn't just a barrier, it was a graveyard for ships that thought they could brute force their way through. Jax snorted, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "Oxygen? Try warp coils. If I push them any harder, we'll be surfing debris instead of navigating it." He patched in a schematic, the overlay blooming in the air like a digital flower. Lines of code scrolled, human ingenuity distilled into algorithms no alien AI could match. Adaptive learning from every scrape and near miss. "But I've got an idea. Remember that old Earth trick from the Apollo days? Slingshot maneuvers, but with a twist." Myra's brow furrowed. "We're not slinging around gas giants here, Jax. This is ionized soup. One wrong vector and the hull breaches." "Exactly." Jax grinned, that irreverent spark in his eyes cutting through the tension. He spun his chair to face them, gesturing wildly. "We don't fight the anomalies, we ride them. Feed the NAV computer a predictive model based on human chaos theory. It's messy, unpredictable like us. The Krell would calculate every variable to death. We'd improvise." Elena waited, her mind racing through the risks. The Council had dismissed humans as reckless primitives, walking away from the floor when they demanded equal say in the frontier claims. Now out here that recklessness was their edge. But Mira was right, the cost could be their lives. A hull breach meant vacuum, suits for a day at most. No rescue in this void. "Run the sims," Elena decided, her voice firm. "If it holds above 70% viability, we go for it." Jax dove back in, the console beeping affirmatively as models spun up. Mira pushed off the wall, joining him, her cautious inputs refining the wild edges of his plan. The ship groaned as they edged closer to the nebula's fringe, sensors pinging warnings like frantic heartbeats. Minutes stretched into an eternity of calculation. The first sim failed spectacularly, a virtual explosion lighting the holo display in harsh red. Jax cursed under his breath, tweaking parameters. Mira suggested damping fields from the auxiliary reactors, a hybrid fix blending caution with audacity. By the third run the sim held 78%. A narrow window, but a window. Elena stood, sealing her decision. "Helm, plot the course." Jax prepped the coils for overload bypass. Mira, monitor structural integrity. "We're not turning back. Humanity doesn't walk away from a fight it can win." The Nomad surged forward, engines flaring against the nebula's pull. Alarms wailed as the first anomaly tugged at them, a gravitational eddy twisting the ship like a leaf in a gale. Jax hooped, riding the controls, the slingshot initiating, a whip-crack acceleration that pressed them into their seats. But then the backfire hit. A rogue plasma filament lanced through the shields, scoring the hull with a screech of tearing metal. Lights dimmed, sparks flying from a console. Mira shouted readings. Compartment 3 venting atmosphere, seals holding but barely. Compensate. Elena barked, unstrapping to grab a manual override. The ship bucked, the viewscreen fracturing with interference, but Jax's model held, flinging them through the coil toward clearer space. They emerged battered, the nebula receding like a defeated beast. Oxygen levels stabilized at 51%, hull patched but scarred. Elena exhaled, meeting their eyes. The stars ahead gleamed with promise, but the cost lingered, a reminder that freedom's price was paid in grit and gamble. Elena gripped the railing of the observation deck, her knuckles whitening against the cold metal. The void outside the viewport stretched infinite, pinpricked by distant stars that seemed to mock their fragile vessel. The Odyssey hummed faintly, its engine straining against the gravitational pull of the nebula they'd miscalculated entering. Marco's voice crackled over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, the core's overheating. If we don't vent plasma soon, we'll cook from the inside." She nodded to herself, though he couldn't see it. Trust Marco to state the obvious without panic. His calm was the anchor in these storms. "Options?" she asked, striding toward the control panel. Her boots echoed on the grated floor, each step a reminder of the crew's dwindling numbers. Only she, Marco, and Lyra remained, the alien navigator whose tentative alliance had kept them alive this far. Lyra floated in from the corridor, her iridescent skin shimmering under the emergency lights. "The nebula's interference blocks our scans," she said, her voice a melodic hum edged with urgency. "Pushing through risks hull breach. Backing out means losing our lead on the pursuers." The pursuers? Elena's jaw tightened. The Vexery fleet, those rigid enforcers of the old Council order, hadn't taken humanity's exodus lightly. Leaving the floor had been a declaration. No more concessions, no more diluted votes. But it painted a target on their backs, and now, trapped in this glowing soup of ionized gas, the stakes clawed higher. One wrong move, and the Odyssey became stellar debris, their bid for independence just another footnote in galactic history. "Marco, reroute auxiliary power to shields," Elena ordered. "Lyra, plot a microjump. Shortest vector out." She punched coordinates into the console, her fingers flying. Human grit, that's what the Council called reckless. But recklessness had built empires from dust. Alarms blared as the first tremor hit. The deck bucked, sending Lyra slamming into a bulkhead. Elena caught her arm, pulling her upright. "Hold on." Marco's shout came through. "Incoming, Vexery probe. It's locking on." Through the viewport, a sleek shadow darted from the nebula's haze, its weapons array glowing crimson. Elena's plan crystallized in an instant, clever adaptation, not brute force. Divert the plasma vent toward it. Make it look like we're venting uncontrollably. Marco paused, then, risky. Could ignite the nebula. Better than letting them board. She hit the comm do it. The ship shuddered as valves hissed open. A plume of superheated plasma erupted from the Odyssey aside, streaking toward the probe like a comet's tail. The Vexery craft veered, but too late. The discharge slammed into it, sparking a chain reaction. Fire bloomed in the gas clouds, illuminating the chaos in stark relief. Twisted metal fragments spiraling away, the probe reduced to slag. Silence fell, broken only by the cooling fans winding down. Lyra steadied herself, eyes wide. "You turned our weakness into a weapon." Elena exhaled, wiping sweat from her brow. But triumph soured quickly. Scans flickered back online, revealing the damage. A fractured coolant line, leaking irreplaceable fluid. And worse, the nebula's heart pulsed closer, a rogue singularity forming from the disturbance they'd caused. Their escape window was shrinking. "Marco, status?" she called. "Core stable, but we're down to emergency reserves. One more hit like that and we're done." Lyra traced a holographic map, her tendrils twitching. "The singularity will pull us in within hours. We need a new path through the dense core." Elena studied the display, the human spark igniting again. "No speeches, just action. Then we adapt." Marco reinforced the hull with those spare alloys. "Lyra, guide us in. We've come this far without the Council's leash. We won't stop now." As the Odyssey angled toward the glowing maelstrom, Elena felt the weight of it all. the friends lost, the stars watching. But in the hum of the engines there was rhythm, a beat of defiance carrying them forward. The cost mounted, but so did their resolve. Captain Ilara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Endeavor's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the debris field ahead, a graveyard of shattered hulls from the Krell Armada, twisted metal glinting under the pulsar's erratic light. Her crew, down to just her engineer Tomas Ruiz, and the tentative alliance with pilot Lyrax from the neutral Vexery Enclave, watched in tense silence. The resource shortage had hit them hardest now. Life support rationed to minimal, recyclers straining against the toxic residue seeping from the breached cargo bays. "Scans confirm it," Tomas muttered, his fingers dancing over the flickering console. Sweat beaded on his brow, but his voice held steady, that stubborn optimism anchoring them. "The core fragments in there, buried under half a kilometer of wreckage. If we extract it, we jumpstart the warp drive and get word back to the colonies. But one wrong nudge and this ship becomes part of the pile." Lyrax's tentacles twitched, the Vexery's bioluminescent eyes pulsing with unease. He joined them after the Council's betrayal left his own people stranded, but trust was a fragile thing in the void. "Human recklessness will doom us all," he clicked in translated bursts. "The field pulls with gravitic anomalies. Your machines cannot compensate." Ilara shot him a glance, her jaw set. Brave didn't mean blind. She'd learned that leading scouts through asteroid storms back on Mars. "Recklessness got us this far, Lyrax." Tomas prepped the manipulator arms. "We'll thread the needle, slow and manual." The ship shuddered as they edged into the field, proximity alarms blaring in sharp bursts. Chunks of debris loomed like silent sentinels, the pulsar casting long shadows that danced across the bridge. Tomas's plan had been elegant on paper. Use the salvage drones to clear a path, then deploy the arms for a precise grab. But the first drone sparked and died against an unseen current, its signal cutting out mid-transmission. "Lost it," Tomas growled, slamming a fist on the panel. The failure stung. He'd poured hours into those bots, his cautious tweaks now wasted. Oxygen levels dipped another notch, the air growing thick, and Ilara felt the burn in her lungs, a reminder of the cost. One more delay, and they'd be ghosts among the stars. Lyrax leaned forward, his voice softening. "My people's probes navigate such fields. Allow me." It wasn't capitulation but adaptation, his wit shining through the fear. Ilara nodded, and he interfaced with the auxiliary station, his neural link weaving Vexery algorithms into the human systems. The screens lit up with fractal patterns, unfamiliar yet precise. Together they guided the Endeavor deeper. Ilara's hand steadied the helm, short commands cutting through the tension. "Port 5 degrees. Hold thrusters." Tomas monitored power flows, diverting what little they had to shields. A massive girder swung perilously close, scraping the hull with a screech that echoed like tearing flesh. Alarms wailed, but they pressed on, the core's faint energy signature pulsing stronger now. "There," Lyrax hissed as the manipulator arms extended, claws unfolding like desperate fingers. The wreckage resisted, a snarl of cables and plating fighting back. Tomas rerouted auxiliary power, his face gaunt under the red emergency lights. "Come on, you beauty," he whispered to the machine as if it could hear. The core dislodged with a groan transmitted through the hull, free at last. But victory cracked open new peril. The debris shifted in response, a chain reaction tumbling toward them. Ilara yanked the controls, the ship lurching into evasive spins. Debris battered the shields, sparks flying across consoles. Lyrax's calculations bought them seconds, Tomas sealing breaches on the fly. They cleared the field, the core secured in the engineering bay, but the Endeavor limped, hull scarred, systems flickering. Ilara exhaled, the bridge quiet save for the labored hum of repairs. The stars outside seemed to hold their breath, waiting for humanity's next move. But the cost lingered. Tomas nursed a gash on his arm, Lyrax's link had overloaded part of his neural pathways, and the jump home would burn the last of their fuel. Earned, yes, but the void never gave without taking. The council chamber's vast dome hummed with the low thrum of holographic stars, each one flickering like a hesitant witness to the unfolding drama. Captain Alara Voss stood at the podium, her uniform crisp despite the sweat beading on her brow, the weight of 1,000 alien gazes pressing down like gravity from unseen worlds. Beside her, Ambassador Kai Ren gripped the edge of the railing, his fingers white-knuckled, the witty retorts that usually danced on his tongue silenced by the gravity of the moment. Dr. Mira Solis, the engineer whose cautious precision had saved their ship more times than Alara could count, hovered at the console behind them, her eyes darting between readouts that screamed failure in every language. The external challenge had escalated beyond their worst simulations. The quantum rift, a tear in spacetime born from the Council's reckless experiment with warp harmonics, now threatened to swallow the entire sector. Planets teetered on the brink, their orbits destabilizing like dominoes in a cosmic gale. Humanity's bold proposal, to seal the rift using a hybrid drive of human ingenuity and scavenged alien tech, had been met with skepticism, then outright rejection. But the stakes were no longer abstract. The first aftershocks had already rippled through, buckling the chamber's floor and sending delegates scrambling. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos, steady as the hum of her ship's engines. "We've shown you the math, the prototypes. Your tech alone can't stabilize it, it's fracturing under the strain. Let us integrate our systems or watch your alliance unravel from the inside." A murmur rippled through the assembly, the avian delegates from Zorith fluffing their feathers in agitation, while the silicon-based enclave reps pulsed with erratic light. Kai leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "They're folding, Cap. See the way the Thaler envoy's mandibles are twitching? That's doubt cracking their unity." He flashed a grin, but it didn't reach his eyes. The cost of delay was already tallied in lives lost on the frontier worlds. Myra's fingers flew across the controls, rerouting power from the chamber stabilizers to project a live feed, the rift's maw widening, devouring a moonlet in a blaze of ethereal fire. Gasps echoed real, visceral fear from species who'd prided themselves on invincibility. The early plan had backfired spectacularly. Their initial demo drive had overloaded, nearly dooming the away team and earning them a lockdown. But, in the holding cells under the flicker of emergency lights, Ilara had rallied them. "We adapt," she'd said, sketching blueprints on a scrap of hull plating. "Human grit isn't about perfection, it's about not quitting when the stars laugh at you." Now, as the chamber shuddered again, the lead counselor, a towering bioluminescent figure from the depths of Aquilon, rose, its voice a resonant wave that vibrated in their bones. "Humanity's audacity borders on folly. Yet, the evidence mounts. A pause heavy as the void. We grant provisional access. But fail and your species joins the rift's debris." Ilara nodded, masking the surge of adrenaline. Teamwork had earned this sliver of trust. Kai's silver tongue negotiating scraps of tech from wary allies, Myra's clever hacks bridging incompatible systems, her own resolve holding the line. They moved as one, dashing to the integration bay where the hybrid core awaited, sparks flying from jury-rigged conduits. The rift's pull tugged at the station, metal groaning like a beast in pain. Mira sealed the final link, her voice calm over the comms. "Initiating sync. Hold steady, it's going to fight us." Energy surged, a wild torrent that lit the bay in blinding blue. Alarms wailed as feedback loops threatened to tear the core apart, but Kai's quick reroute, born from a half-remembered spacer's tale, diverted the excess, buying precious seconds. Ilara manned the overrides, her hands steady on the levers, feeling the ship's soul pulse through the controls. The rift bucked, lashing out with tendrils of warped reality that clawed at the barriers. Sweat stung her eyes, but she pushed, inching the seal closed. "Almost there," she gritted out as Myra's calculations fed in real-time adjustments, Kai calling out vectors from the observation deck. With a final, thunderous roar, the rift knit shut, the stars beyond snapping back into alignment. Silence fell, broken only by the settling creak of the station. The cost lingered, a scarred hull on their ship, worlds forever altered by the quake's echoes, and trust hard-won but fragile. Ilara exhaled, slumping against the console as Kai clapped her shoulder, Mira offering a rare, weary smile. Outside, the stars breathed again, but humanity's place among them felt irrevocably changed, earned not by decree but by the fire they'd walked through together.